Yo.
Welcome, dude. All through my Twitter timeline right now everybody is very about singing the Knox praise.
Oh, well,
So-
that's the wrong song. Let everybody know.
No, it's awesome, man. You just finished a big doc, and
Is it big?
I feel like it is. At least in
Wow.
our circles, I feel
Okay,
like
well, praise
I'm
God.
seeing. I feel like I'm out of the Southern Baptist circles, and I know all about it.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want to start with by what standard.
Okay.
I want to get to that. So you are also on CrossPolitic, you're
Right.
a host. I hear there like Twitter trolls who are confused about.
Who does what for how much for how many cookies?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You are, from what it sounds like, the leading guy of the media arm of Douglas Wilson, which
I don't
congratulations.
think Doug knows. Wait till Doug finds out.
That is really funny. So as the media arm, it's really nice to have you in studio.
Oh, thank you. I've never gotten a command to do anything. But...
I know. Could you imagine his surprise? So I was just telling you right before we started, I found out about you. I was living in Minneapolis. I was going to college
Hey, hometown.
at Bethlehem College and Seminary.
Yeah.
And I think so. I started with my professor was Joe Rigney my freshman year,
Yeah.
and he taught a.
Does Joe like people?
I think that's like his big secret is he's just
He
like
does.
I'm gonna like I have too many friends and I'm stopping there. And so it's just like, I think he would otherwise be friendly, and he's just like,
He's
no,
like,
I'm
no,
fill-
I
I'm
had to.
filled
Like,
up.
it's like a friends list goes
I'm
too full on
filled up.
Facebook. He's like, I'm
Yeah,
good.
seriously.
I kind of made that joke before. And next time he saw me, he hugged me. I was like,
Did he?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good,
yeah.
good,
That's just
good.
like it's just one person though. There's hundreds out there. He owes an apology to.
he's a goof, man. It was funny. There were students like later when I was a senior. They were like, I don't know if Joe likes us, and I was like, no, Joe likes you plenty. It's. So anyway, he did a lecture on like the problem of evil, and he used notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl.
Yeah.
That was like my introduction to the whole world. So I started reading everything I could, and then I also started looking up who else is in the sphere. And so then I found Gary DeMar stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was only like 2 clicks away before I found like Crown Right's YouTube page.
Wow, that's an
And
amazing
I think it's
journey.
you and Gary on the couch. Wasn't it
Edified,
a couch?
yes.
Yes, or Edified. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And questions about things that I was asking about postmillennialism, because I'm at a Baptist college.
Right.
Historic premillennialism. I have all those questions, like why isn't the world ending if that's what my New Testament says? So
Right.
the media you guys were doing, and I'm curious about how did you even get in all that? But anyway, it was super helpful to me in college. So
Well, praise God. That's one
Seriously.
person that God used.
seriously
media
though, it
for
was
it.
awesome. So
Wow, man.
how did you get? Where are you from? Where did you come from?
Yeah, that's. So let me jump into the Gary DeMar thing real quick. So
yeah.
the person who's inspired me, to do filmmaking and to get into this world is Darren Doan,
Okay.
which you've had in here
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And Darren inspired me because he this is kind of gonna sound like an insult. Darren makes you feel like I can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can do that. And it's not in a bad way. It's like, oh, that looks amazing. I want to do that, but I think he shows me the map of how I can do that.
Right.
And so Darren basically, we saw some stuff he did with Kirk Cameron in an interview, and it was so simple. It was so basic. And yet it was put together in a professional way that was like, that's punk rock. That's bad right there. And he's not doing it in the way where it's like, you got to have the polished camera. You got to have, don't show the light showing. Oh, you messed up. Show the behind the scenes shot as your main shot. And, he just broke all the rules and he made it work. And usually when people break the rules, it's because they're amateurs.
Yeah.
But he's at a high level.
Accidentally.
Yeah, he's intentionally breaking all the rules and saying, this is cool. And you're like, you're right.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
right.
yeah, totally. Totally.
And so that encouraged both Marcus Pittman and myself. So
Okay.
Marcus Pittman was
You said we a second ago. Is
right. That's what I mean by
okay,
we. Yeah,
cool.
Marcus Pittman. I'll start in Georgia. I'm from Minneapolis.
Okay.
My parents were missionaries, and at the point my mom and dad got a divorce, Minneapolis at the time was a place where a single mom can go and start without feeling like she's missing her left side of her body.
Okay. Yeah.
So it helped us get on our feet after my parents' divorce. So we moved to Minneapolis.
Where in Minneapolis? Right?
We were over south side of Minneapolis,
Got it.
and then ended up being over north side of Minneapolis. So we ended up being
Okay.
like right in the middle of the hood, north
Nice.
side.
Yeah.
Now south side of Minneapolis is all nice now. It's been gentrified.
I know. I do feel like even the time that I was there, things were changing, and I was there right when the stadium was going out.
yeah.
So I lived a block from the stadium.
Oh,
So I was like kind of like right there Downtown. I was right next to the church.
Yeah, so I was right behind John Piper's church. I grew up behind there in
No
Elliott Court
way.
Park. Is that where you were staying?
I know. Well, I was on the other side. So, like, it was almost if you were coming in from the highway
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Piper's church is on your left.
Yep.
There's a white house, a 2-story white house
Okay.
on your right.
And that's where you were.
It's like the one house in downtown, like in
in that area.
downtown. It's really strange.
Well,
anyway,
there was a little efficiency in the back. I had no idea that John Piper's church was behind
Really?
it. I was rollerblading in his parking lot and
did you
going
you
inside
probably
to use the
rollerbladed
bathroom.
past him?
I probably did. Would have never known. I had no idea.
He never drove. Like, he just walked to and fro all
Did
the
he?
time. Yeah.
See, I had no idea he was there. When we became Reformed, we ended up finding a church out in Egan called Egan Hills.
Okay.
And that was because of Todd Frio. I was listening to his
Oh.
KKMS radio show there
Got it.
when he was local before it became Wretched and Way of the Master Radio.
Okay.
And when we found a church, because he said, hey, if you're going to a church with a woman as your pastor, you're in danger. Get out.
Okay.
And that shook my soul. I called and said, where's his church at?
Yeah.
Where's Todd's church at? He said in Egan. Went there that Sunday.
So he's from Minnesota.
He's from Minneapolis or
Wow.
Minnesota too. Yeah. So I know the office in Apple Valley. I think Apple Valley was the area Todd was staying in. So we were
Wow.
worlds apart. But his, it's amazing technology, the blessing
Yeah.
of radio. He was able to catch a little black kid in the ghetto, listening to a Christian
Crazy.
radio show. And so you never take those things for granted. And so in Minneapolis, growing up behind John Piper's church, we became Reformed, did not know Piper was in Minneapolis.
Got it.
So we go to the church out in Egan Hills, and they're like, oh, you love John Piper? I was like, yeah, he's great. I love that guy. I want to go to a conference one day. It's like, the good thing he's local. I'm like, huh? What you mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's right over South Minneapolis, right downtown. It's like, no. There's another little church over there. That's John Piper's church. Why am I traveling 20 minutes to go all the way?
Yeah, it's a drive.
It was a drive.
Yeah.
So, but that's how I found out John Piper was
That's
in
actually
Minneapolis.
not surprising. No one there knows who John Piper is.
No.
Like, John Piper's ministry is so international, so big,
Yep.
and the people down the street. I mean, Minneapolis is just like that, though. It's not.
It is.
It's so
It's
diverse.
a town. It's not a city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it takes 5-minute walk before you're in a different area.
That's right.
The one you just left. So
I think that convicted John a little bit too, though. I think he wanted to
100%.
be more and more present in the community he was in. So I appreciated that because I was a kid
Absolutely.
that was getting passed over right behind his church. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I appreciate that. And anyway, so I hooked up with Todd at the church in Egan Hills and got to know him and his business partner Joel. Todd had gotten basically, I don't want to say kicked off or released from KKMS because he was just preaching the gospel.
Sure.
And it's amazing how simple gospel message gets you in trouble. And so he was good friends with Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, and he was on the phone with Ray, and Ray's like, well, if you're leaving, we're going to start our own show. He's like, Ray, you just don't start your own show. That's cute, though.
Well, what
That's
year
nice.
is this, too?
This had to be 2000. Ooh, 2007, 2008,
Okay.
something like that.
Yep.
We're going to start our own radio show. Todd is very skeptical because Ray is doing a TV show that was doing really good at the time, Way of the Master TV.
Okay.
It was the first time I think we had seen Christian television that was probably worth engaging.
Where was that?
It was all over TBN.
Okay, TBN.
Yeah, it
Got
was on
Well,
TBN.
I mean, on TBN.
Yeah,
so.
but it was actually good.
That's what I'm kind of shocked. I
You
didn't
know
know good stuff hit TBN.
Yeah, well, it's always good when they don't ask for a love offering at the end of
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah,
I feel there's 5 people to give me $10,000 for our next episode. You're like, wow, they didn't fleece me. I feel
I mean, some poor lady's pulling out her phone.
right.
So,
Getting ready for it.
seriously.
And so they Kirk just happened to be at some sort of meeting, conference, and the guy's like, hey, Kirk, have you ever thought about doing your own radio show on Sirius? And Kirk's like, no, never thought of it. It keeps going. It just happens that Ray calls Kirk, hey, we're going to start a radio show. Kirk, so Guy's giving Kirk the connection over here. God's giving Ray the faith. And then God is giving all 3 of them a spokesperson to do it.
Gave Todd
the
Friel
word.
that voice.
That's exactly right. And wisdom. That's how Way of the Master got started.
Okay.
And before I was ever a part of it, I was giving money to help them grow because Todd had been a blessing in my life, just becoming reformed.
Okay.
I remember if you've ever not been reformed and you hear someone exegete scripture, that's different. Your heart resonates with it in a way. It's like, that's Bible. And I want that. And that's what Todd was the first time I've ever heard it. It was like,
awesome.
that's whatever he's doing, I want to learn how to do that. So they started started on the FamilyNet Sirius Radio, I think it was 161 or something like that. And it started growing. About 6-7 months in, they needed a producer to edit and I was working as an audio engineer in multiple music studios in Minneapolis, but
Okay.
that wasn't paying my bills. I
Okay.
was like, doing construction and maintenance man,
Oof.
and you know, God was faithful in that. But Ty was like, "Hey, you wanna come do this?" I was like, "Yes." And
That's
I
awesome.
think I dropped like my pay went down 28 grand or something like that. I didn't care.
But yeah, you just pumped.
And so as they're doing Way of the Master TV show, we're trying to grow, but it's really interesting. The radio market started dying. So
Okay.
it really wasn't any money in the radio market anymore. So how do you make money doing this? You got over 2 million people listening to you. It was just a weird market. And we did a video asking, or some sort of promo video, and someone from FamilyNet in Georgia saw that video, who was a producer for the FamilyNet television show that Dr. Charles Stanley had just purchased from Texas. So it was a FamilyNet.
Wow.
He bought it from Texas to Georgia and was looking for new talent. Saw one of our videos, saw Todd, and was like, "That's the talent." Todd hasn't done TV before,
Sure.
but he knows the
Yep.
industry. Todd was a stand-up comedian, so you know, I mean, riding with big names.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he was the truth.
Awesome.
So anyway, so they pick up Todd and say, "Hey, can you come down to Georgia?" Yes, we move half of our office down there, hire one other person, start Way of the Master TV, Wretched Television.
Okay.
Wretched Television does very well.
Yeah.
And so this is important, because when I got to FamilyNet and basically In Touch Studios, In Touch Ministries in Georgia, they had one floor with nothing but media guys editing and producing.
Wow.
I had only did audio stuff. So I'm
So you're like,
watching.
I'm good on audition. For
Yeah.
Sure. I've got that locked.
Yeah, exactly. Audition I got.
Yeah.
But there was so many other things, Final Cut and Premiere and then After Effects. And I fell in love with their art. Fell in love with, there was another guy, Chris, who was doing mixing, post-production mixing. And the way he was sweetening audio it was different than some of the things I learned. So I started spending my lunch breaks down there with those guys.
Okay.
And this is dangerous. And this is hustling. We had a team of 15. We had 2 other producers for us, and they made the mistake of one day of not showing up.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, I can do that.
Next man up.
And that was it. And it was like, you reach, I teach, bro.
Yeah.
And he slept, and I told Ty, I said, I can do that, and I can do the editing. And Ty was like, you show me. I said, I've been doing it for 3 months. You haven't even noticed.
My lunch breaks.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I just wanted him to know that if there was a gap or anything in my work, I wanted you to be able to notice it, and he hadn't noticed it. And so it was kind of my way of saying, I could do this.
Totally.
I did it. And so he was like, game on. So
Wow.
got rid of the producers, and
Wow.
sorry, guys.
I know.
And,
wow.
And God just blessed it. And so after we had a 3-year contract, we ended it a little early. We just learned. And so this is where Darren Doan comes in. So at this point, Kirk's doing his thing. Kirk's about to drop a film called Monumental. He's working with this filmmaker, Darren Doan. They do this interview, and we saw that interview, and because we were in a relationship with Kirk, right?
Right.
So we did a thing with Kirk. I had filmed at his house, and so we were cool. Everybody was cool, but we weren't connected with Darren. And so we were watching all Kirk's stuff. We see Darren do this interview, and we're like, he didn't do this for much money. And we're sitting up here with a team of 15. How do we, I remember Todd asking, how do we produce something the way that he's doing it?
Yeah. He's just imagining those margins.
Right.
going by.
You feel like that when you own the company. Like,
Yeah.
how can I put that in my pocket?
Right.
And bless my employees. Too.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah.
Just less of them.
And so I started following Darren and started following what he was doing. And so we moved from FamilyNet and bought our own studios and started and hired one other guy named Adrian Rink from Minneapolis.
Okay.
Who was a camera guy, 18-year-old kid 19-year-old kid who is just amazing camera guy. And he came in and made for us comparable setup that we had and brought in the technology for us to be able to film in a way that was with 3 guys. So we took a 15 crew, dumped them all into Adrian, put a camera on me, and that's where we got started. And so at the time, we hire another guy, Marcus Pittman. A few months later, Marcus,
he's in Georgia.
He was in Virginia.
Okay. Wow.
But he had been doing these really weird videos and gospel sharing videos like with Ray, and he's just
Ray Comfort.
Yeah, with Ray Comfort, and so he was one of the guys who was at the conferences you'd see there, and but Marcus was just kind of this weird redhead kid, always wearing shirts too big, who seemed like he knew what he was doing a little bit with the camera. So we hired him.
He'll work.
Yeah, he'll work. He
Yeah.
was horrible.
Yeah. Dang.
He was absolutely horrible.
Dang. Okay.
He did a horrible job for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Long story
Okay.
short, we fired him.
Wow.
And-
It's good that you're doing it on this program. and
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
CrossPolitic program.
he knows, yeah. And Marcus was great at graphics though, so we kept him along for some graphic stuff,
Okay.
but we couldn't use him for camera work, and I think that kind of crushed Marcus.
Okay.
So Marcus, I felt like and I became a theonomist through Marcus, so through radio shows that we were doing, he'd get done and come complain about what Todd was saying, and I was like, Todd's great, what are you talking about? And his exegesis about biblical application, I was
Sure.
already there because I'm a charismatic, so we don't let
Yeah.
go of our Old Testament, right?
Sure.
We need those to get our blessings and offerings to pay for our benzos and planes. And so I was in, and then when he left, I felt like I needed to still be working with him. I didn't know for what or how, but he had this
With Marcus
with
or
Marcus
okay,
Pittman,
got
sorry,
it.
yeah. And he had this line he used to always say. I say, man, you did a great job today. He's like, hey, for the crown rights of King Jesus. And I love that line.
Yeah.
And so when Marcus left Wretched, he started this company called Crown Rights. And I said, man, come stay in my basement. Don't go back to Virginia. We'll find your jobs wherever you can. I'll work with you on this. Let's make this. And so that's basically how Crown Rights got started. We sent a video to Darren and said, Darren, here's our first video on Edified. We'd love your help figuring out how to get better at this. Could you help us? And we were horrible. Darren was kind. This is so important because Darren said, I love it. It's great. You guys get stuff done. I want to be on the show. And me and Marcus flipped and freaked out because Darren had done all these music videos with platinum selling.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he don't talk about himself as much, but he was the man.
I know.
Over 500 music videos. Who has a library like that?
When I had him on, it was like basically one sad show about how Darren basically raised me through his music videos.
Yeah.
I watched them all. I knew all of those, So,
but he didn't promote himself. Darren was of the mind he was about promoting his artist. So you don't just find him because nowadays if somebody does a music video, the director, the film crew. It wasn't like that.
You got to
for
go
him.
hunt his Wikipedia page down and be like, no,
right,
that one too, and all that. It's
And so he inspired us to and encouraged us, and then connected us with Gary DeMar.
Okay.
And so he's like, you need to take this. You need to go interview Gary and do one of these.
And Gary's in Georgia.
Gary's in Georgia.
Okay.
He's about an hour
Did
away
Pittman
from
know
where
it?
we were.
Marcus Pittman know him?
He did know Gary DeMar, but he didn't know that he was in Georgia, and no one had any connections. And American Vision was, in one sense, was kind of like this. At one time, they were probably very popular and had somehow lost favor, maybe because of the technology change. They didn't jump on that bandwagon. Stayed only to authoring books, writing some articles, and so they kind of they were towards the end of their heyday. And we got there, and it was like finding a treasure chest of content.
Seriously.
They have so much great content, so much great insights, and letters from Bonson that aren't even published yet. I mean,
Crazy.
they got a wonderful library. Gary DeMar wasn't interested.
No?
No, he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in like hiring us to do stuff for him or anything like that. Not at all.
Yeah, okay.
And
not at all.
no, he was like, that's cool. We don't need that. We're cool.
Wow.
And we did Edified with him.
Yep.
And Edified, how you were talking about, I was at this place, I was trying to answer these same questions.
Yeah.
I'm at Wretched having a conversion experience. I'm not dispensational, but my theology is kind of there.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to the idea of the gospel winning in the world, but I don't know how to exegete it. I see these verses. There's a book by Gary DeMar that was called Myth, Lies, and Half-Truths. And that book began to open up for me and answer all of my questions.
Wow.
So Edified was just taking that book into a dialogue.
Okay.
So what I was technically doing was pitching Gary, saying if you put it into a different context, you might be able to.
Right. Well,
And
he was kind enough to come on when he was here briefly.
Oh,
came
did
in
he?
Briefly. And I told him, I was like, Edified was the first place I ever saw you.
Man.
And that's where I fell down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So,
That was it. Yeah. And that introduction for me, I did the same thing. You were just living it with me at that time.
yeah.
And actually, I asked Todd, I said, Todd, because I'd already started challenging Todd with some of the things I was learning. If you watch Wretched at the time, you'll see some of the influences of biblical theonomy, practical theology in the show because I'm producing it, right? So some of it's bleeding in, and Todd is in somewhat agreement with it, but he's in agreement with it practically, not exegetically.
Got it.
And so that was a great place to be at because I was like, I can just push the content here.
Also, I feel like it should be said for Marcus's sake that whenever the thing that I remember most about Wretched, besides his voice, which is electric radio voice.
Oh, you're talking about Todd?
Yeah. Is how often you're moving cameras.
Yes.
So thinking about it now is on this side of Canon and being a part of all that we do here, it seems like a nightmare of just like that camera. I mean, it seems difficult.
Yeah. Well, there are a few people who can, at the drop of a dime, take a topic and then flesh that topic out for 7 minutes of a segment and do that, 5 shows back to back. I mean, that's just unheard of. People were trying to write content for Todd when we first got to In Touch. It didn't work. Okay. He's not wired that way.
Okay.
Todd was the kind of guy, this is how production worked for us. This is a little fun insight. I would find the content. He basically trained me to look for the kind of things that were in our lane. Okay. We had 20 topics. They narrowed it down to 10. We can hit anything if they fit into that 20. So I spent my whole day finding content, edited it up for him. I give him a cue cards of what we had. I mean, moments before we filmed. Okay. He'll send me some stuff here or there, but usually Todd would walk in about 15 minutes before filming. He would look at the cue cards, and he would say, that's good. Let me see that one. All right, cool. And then he'd say, we're going to do this one, this one, this one, and this one. And the cameras would roll, and the show was laid out from that point. 15 minutes before going on.
It seems like he's just walking around. Like, are you trying to keep up with him, or is?
Yeah, that's interesting. We had to create a dance. This is what Marcus was horrible at.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For his sake, it seems hard.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Yeah, that's what you meant by.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Oh, yeah.
It seems hard.
It is hard because if we're doing that dance and you hit the wrong place as a cameraman, you missed it. The 6-minute segment. How do we get out of it?
Right.
I mean, and so we shot we can shoot in one day 3 shows.
Okay.
We shot 1 show for the whole day. And so, but you're right. It is. There's multiple people. It wasn't just Marcus who couldn't handle that dance.
Yeah.
That dance is hard.
Right.
And you had to learn it, but it was just, he couldn't get it.
Totally.
And so, but yeah, Todd is just walking around, but the camera guys are moving into places. We have spots that we know we need to be in. Right. And we know that if we're not in those spots,
you're going to miss it.
You're going to miss it. And there's no other way to cross the room because the room is wide open. You don't ever see the other cameraman.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing is like you never saw one of those. So anyway.
Marcus was doing stuff when he left Wretched, it was really weird. So you're in Atlanta. So, Andre 3000 and those guys, he started doing things with those guys. He started doing things with their crew. Yeah, he started shooting videos for them and stuff. There was maybe a story he'd tell. Like they knew he was a Christian. And he was shooting videos and they were like, we're about to go to this club, the strip club. And he's like, I can't do that one. They were like, oh, okay, well, we won't go to the strip club then. They switched their plans up because for him, it was, so he was working with some of their guys, the whole crew, and Big Boy and those guys would come.
I've always thought Andre looked like a nice guy.
Yeah. So I don't know how much relationship he had with them, but I know he was shooting for the stuff for them.
Funny.
Yeah. And so anyway, that whole thing with Gary DeMar was just in my transitional stage. And I asked Todd questions to give me for Gary.
Okay.
Like, my kingdom is not of this world,
Yeah.
So all those things.
Yeah.
And Gary was when I realized that language was so important in exegetical work. It sounds basic, but it's not.
Yeah, right.
It's not. Verbs matter.
Yeah.
Right,
100%.
What is said matters and what is not said matters. All those things are important. And Gary, he said, it doesn't say my kingdom is not over this world.
Right.
And I remember thinking, bing, got it. I get it. No, you don't have to finish, And so anyway, after Edified, I said, I went out and worked with Darren on a music video shoot.
Okay. Who was it?
It was Shine Down.
Okay. Yeah.
The first video I ever worked with Darren on, and that one blew my mind. So, okay. I got time for this?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we're on your schedule, man.
Oh, okay.
So
you got me telling the story. So I meet Darren. He has a limo come pick me up. Okay. First of all, what a way to ingratiate yourself to somebody. Get there, and I meet with him and his DP, And he says, we're going to shoot this music video for Shinedown. And he goes onto a board. He's like, okay, it's going to kick off. He's like, when it kick off, I'm going to have these huge explosions. Boom, 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 boom. Because that's the opening of the song. And then I want a helicopter to fly over. I want the smoke to come up. And then I want it to start raining. And then I want a fire. And then I want like a flower at the bottom of this. And I started laughing.
Because surely he's joking.
It's a joke, right? And the DP says, what lens do you want to use? You know, the Phantom camera would be nice. He's like, yes, Phantom. I was super slow motion. You know, Darren's going, and then somewhere in there, I realized he's not joking.
Yeah,
like, he's really going to do this.
Right.
How are you going to do the explosion of these mortars? You know, and a huge gas explosion with each individual one. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is real. And I started writing down because I'm supposed to be helping with this.
Yeah.
So I don't know what this video cost. It's a couple $100,000 maybe, something like that. Because it was crazy. We found a set. We did a live sound stage outside.
Where are you?
We're in California,
Okay, got it.
Westlake Village area.
Got it.
And there's a live sound stage they found outside, old cowboy kind of Mexican home building or whatever. And then the other side's just an open set. He starts doing pictures and everything the first day. And then he comes to me and says, tomorrow I'm going to have 4 or 5 trailers pull up. He's like, I want you to put all the trailers in their place and make sure I have a good place for the set and for the lighting and stuff. Walks away. Time out. Listen, that's cute. I don't know what I'm doing, Darren. You know?
Yeah.
And so I finally called him and said, hey man, where's the stuff going to go at? He's like, if I got to tell you that, why I need to pay you? Now Darren's been real laid back, cool with me this whole time. It's the first time I get like a sharp cut. I was like, no, you right. I'll figure that out.
I knew that.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Because he had told me, he's like, look, I'll give you some D-love if you get down here. So I bought my ticket. He let me stay at his house. They took such good care of me. And so anyway, at this point, I'm trying to figure it out. And he graciously comes in and he's like, the sun's going to come from this way. You probably don't know that yet. He's like, so just put my stage here and trailers can go anywhere over there. I'm there at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:45. We got effects trailers coming in. We have food trailers coming in. We have clothing trailer. We have band trailer coming in. You know, it's just, and I'm sitting there thrown into this world. And at this point, I'm still working at Wretched. I took off my week vacation, 10-day vacation to go down here and spend time with Darren for 10 days for a boot camp. And I don't know what I'm doing, where I have no idea what's going on. And he had no problem throwing me into the thickest part of it.
Okay.
And all of the things that I could have done had a mistake where it could have cost him serious money.
Right.
And so it really mattered. Everything I did mattered. It wasn't like, oh, you're just coming down here, do a little learning, and you're going to go away. No, it actually has to have consequences. Otherwise, you don't get how this industry works. So he put me in it, and I respect that. I didn't leave that night until 11:30. So I saw all of them trailers come in. Darren comes in about an hour or so after I got the trailers, comes in with the band. He was with them that whole morning. And I watched him do everything he said he wanted to do. Mortar explosions, helicopter flying over, fire explosions, lighting the piano on fire, making it rain after that, and closing out the video and then putting the flower as Brent walks away. I saw him plan that from the beginning to the end, and he did that within 2 days.
Wow.
And did it. And so I say that because after I weathered that storm with Darren, walked away, he has this thing after he has steak and wine, after he has a big shoot. And we're at his house and we're doing steak and wine. He's like, Uncle Gary needs to hire you. And so he put in word. Uncle Gary took him seriously since he did Collision with Uncle Gary. And that's how I got connected with American Vision.
Got it. So, okay, so is that at that point? Did you leave?
I wanted Wretched. I loved Wretched. I couldn't. It was hard for me to want to leave. So even though I had the offer from American Vision, I wanted to do all the things that I wanted to do at Wretched.
Sure.
And so I went back with a counter offer at Wretched and I said, hey, can we figure this out? Can we do this? And Ty just wasn't at that place yet. Yeah. He was at a different place. I wanted to make films. I wanted to make films. I wanted to make movies. I knew that was the next place that we need to go. And I felt like that Ty not only could do that, he could also start his own network and he can own the center on everything. But, in God's timing, that just wasn't for Wretched. That just wasn't their thing. And we split ways.
Okay.
But that was my heart. That's where I wanted to be at.
Yeah.
And God said, you're going to American Vision. And so we went to American Vision and out the gate come out with How to Answer the Fool.
Okay.
a presupposition
Yeah.
apologetic film with Cy Ten Bruggencate.
Yep.
And that was a huge blessing.
Yeah.
So
Did you? So that's another one that I watched that was big.
is that one
So
big
yeah,
too?
yeah, that was big. That was big. So we may just be doing the same Darren,
Yeah.
basically the same podcast with different people.
Okay. Well, that's an honor.
Because that, yeah, seriously. So that doc was huge.
Did you really? Wow, man, thank you.
Oh yeah, easy.
Wow.
Man. There was another doc, and I think you did it on baptism. I've not watched it, but I've shown that preview to like a ton of people.
John Crawford, baptism is not
yeah.
enough.
Yes, baptism is not enough. Okay.
Yeah, I think he ripped that from Doug.
Okay. Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah,
that
so
makes sense.
that was the title. John Crawford, man, that dude, man, he's such a blessing. John Crawford came to American Vision with the book idea.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, here goes a good book. I don't know if you guys want to write it or anything, but I think this book needs to be done. And at the time, I'm still Baptist Presbyterian.
Okay, Baptist.
Yeah, Baptist. I'm in, but I haven't really. I think I might have baptized one of my kids at this point, so I might be Presbyterian, but I'm not getting it all the way.
Got it.
And so I read this book, and I said, this needs to be a film. This needs to be a film. You got to do a film out of this. And he's like, a film? He's like, who? Okay, so how do we make a film out of this?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I got it. Just come talk to me. Show up this days. We'll make a film in 3 days.
Did you?
We did.
Wow.
It was 2 actually.
Wow.
2 film days and some production.
Is that
days.
at American Vision? That can be purchased at American Vision.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, if you sign up to be a CrossPolitic Fight Laugh Feast member, you actually can get the film.
You can get that film?
You can get Baptism is Not Enough. I'll get you a copy. I know some people.
Okay, that's awesome.
But yeah, so you can get that. But anyway, yeah, that's available at the Fight Laugh Feast Network. I think John Crawford has some too, as covenantaldivide.com.
Okay.
Is his website. But he just understood, most time when people represent Baptists, they don't do it well.
Okay.
And when people talk about Presbyterians and infant baptism, they don't do it well.
Yeah.
He was willing to be honest with both sides of the conversation and to answer questions about baptism that I think everybody really wanted to know. But we had to stop acting like Presbyterians weren't reading their Bibles.
Yeah.
And we had to stop acting like Baptists concerned about salvific being baptized because you're makes you a part of the covenant.
Yeah.
We have to stop
regenerate.
Yeah, we have to start acting like those weren't conversations that we, let's talk for real. And Crawford took it seriously, and he has a line in the film, and he's just talking about. To me, I don't think God's world is disconnected spiritually and naturally. They're not. They work together.
Yeah.
In the same way, sin curses the land. How did that happen? Well, you do a physical act, and there's some sort of spiritual thing that is out of relationship with God that creates an effect in your land. That's the world that God made, right? They're not disconnected. And so once you realize that, there's a lot of other things that happen that you take for granted. And one of them was your child has your name. They didn't, you know what I mean? They have your name. Now, they can have that more than one way. There's a generic, they have your name because you have them, it's your child. But there's also this, they act like a Shannon.
Yeah.
They embrace the culture of the Shannon, and they represent us rightly. And Crawford said, and we do this covenantally as a nation and as just families. When does your son get to have your name? He has your name because he's born into that, and he's expected to act like a Shannon, to be treated like a Shannon. And if he ever does not act that way, he's disciplined for not acting that way according to that standard. And then there's a way for him to lose the name.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And there's a point in which he actually embraces that's who he is. Right. And so he walks through that with me, and the light went on clear as day that God's world is covenantal and it's inescapable.
Right.
So you're not going to get around that. And so Crawford was a person who basically made me, pedo communion, the whole nine. He brought me into that. And Baptism Not Enough was the last film I made for American Vision.
Okay.
But there's one before that with Gary DeMar called The Symposium on...
Yes. I have that one too, dude.
Do you really?
Yeah,
Look at you. How did you...
Yeah, man.
I'm
telling you, I was like deep.
Wow.
I
you were.
Everything I could get my hands on. I don't know why the baptism one I never got. But I mean, as far as the symposium, I got that one. How to Answer the Fool. Collision. All those things were super helpful where I was. So, as I was reading a ton of Doug Wilson stuff and the rest, those kind of media outlets, American Vision and the rest, were fun, man.
Praise God. That's such an encouraging thing to hear. When you do something, you don't ever know that Is
Did
get
it
out
hit
there.
anybody?
Yeah, did it hit anybody? Just hearing somebody say it, it's just encouraging. It's encouraging.
Good, man. Well, like I said, I'd be happy to sing those praises all day. Okay, so you did those you finished up at the symposium,
Mm-hmm.
and then how the heck did you get here?
Darren Doan.
Darren Doan again. I feel like I have a limit. I usually have a limit on like Forrest Dickinson accolades. Like
Oh, really?
guests, I limit like one nice thing about Forrest. Now I'm gonna have to put one on Darren.
Yeah, you might have to. For me,
only...
he's a huge part in this. Darren, he's filmmaking the whole nine. So I'm working American Vision, and he calls me and says, "It's time for you to leave." I was at that place with American Vision where I was trying to get them to do podcasting.
Got it.
This is years before it ever became like a thing. I just knew that Gary DeMar had to start doing a radio show. And I was doing a radio show for 6-7 years with Todd Friel. I know how to produce this stuff. This is what I do. And Gary's like, I don't know how to do radio. I was like telling him and Joel McDermott, listen, just come in there. I'll set you guys up. We can knock this out. This is 2012, 13.
Okay.
Yeah. So podcasting just kind of come on, but not really.
Real quick, did you do the video where it's Joel talking about don't limit the gospel?
That's exactly. I did.
I've probably sent that video to so many people.
That was
just, man, I really like that video.
And I did that because I knew that from where I was at, there was a blind spot in American Vision. They thought more people were like them than they were, than that was actually out there.
Okay.
And so they got categorized as people who don't understand the gospel. They're just out there preaching moral therapeutic deism and worry about politics, but they don't have any gospel center.
Got it.
And so when I got there, I said, the first thing I want to make, that was the first thing I made, I want to talk about the gospel and its application in the world.
Got it.
And Joel knocked that out the park.
It's a great video.
He killed it.
And then isn't there one about like Gary's sitting in between some shelves and he's talking about school?
Yeah.
I think it's school.
Yeah, that's when he had his weight bench in his office and everything.
Yes, it was in there.
It's weird to see that man come in there. It's like, I don't want to mess with Uncle Gary, man. He knocked you clean out. But yeah, so those were the videos was so important. Education, public education, government education, and then the gospel is so important because I don't think they understood how everybody else viewed them in the conversation. And I wanted to be clear that they were gospel people first.
Yeah.
And the gospel has tentacles into everything now. Yeah. And so
I think that last part that you mentioned about the tentacles and the efficacy out there.
Yes.
Or it's usually limited to, like he says in the video, forgiveness of sins and the rest, which is all essential and primary.
Yeah.
But that it might actually have efficacy out there.
Absolutely.
So anyway, those kind of things were really good. So I cut you off again though, but
no.
You're leaving.
So Darren says, I want you to come out to California for 6 months with me and DP a film called Saving Christmas.
Okay.
And I was like,
you didn't just DP that.
I didn't DP it at all, actually.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
no, but I didn't. I got there and did all kinds of other things. I was my skill set. Darren must have thought my skill set in place it wasn't. I wasn't there yet, but I wanted to be.
Okay.
He's like, you're gonna help me DP this film.
Okay.
That was his line.
Got it.
And that's what got me excited. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll be out there.
Okay.
And so Darren, he was actually just finishing up a film with Nate.
The
Mercy Rule.
Mercy Rule. Yeah.
So I was out there a little bit for that and helped him get through that a little bit and did some stuff. And he's like, okay, come out. So I came out there. I got there right after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It was the first part of December. And he's like, so you're going to come. I got it there. Drove up to his house. We're getting out. He basically has a glass of wine for me as soon as I get in the door. He's like, sit down, man. You need some wine. I was like, yeah, of course I do. I've been driving. It's a little crazy. But I didn't know why. He was setting me up. He's like, I'm moving to Moscow.
He actually told me this.
Did he tell you this story?
He told me about this.
And I was like, Russia?
Yeah.
And I looked at him. I was like, is there a job out there? Because I done left everything in Georgia. I still have my house in Georgia, but I'm like, I done left everything in Georgia, quit my job in Georgia. I'm trying to figure out how to pay for my bills.
He's just like, hey, man, take a sip.
Yeah, just drink the wine, Knox, And I asked, like, what's in Moscow?
It's a great question.
Yeah, and he said, he's like, Doug Wilson, a community of people who know how to fight. He's like, I want to be with people who, when it's time, they know how to fight. They know how to engage culture. They know what they're doing. And I might get in trouble for saying some of this. So I'll let him get on me. He had a school at the time, And I think he had just been beat down with people not getting the vision of education. The people were thinking, I just want to keep my son safe.
I know his like one graduate.
Yeah.
They were out there with me in Bethlehem.
Were they really?
It's really random.
That's weird.
It's really random.
You're everywhere, dude.
I know, it's really random.
And I think that he had just had enough. And when I got to Moscow, I've seen a lot of people that had schools, and they were just, I realized the school and the church must go together, first of all. So you can have a school and no church, and then the church will, or the church won't be engaged in supporting the school in one way or another, and the worldview just collapses. And I think he was just tired, especially in California, of trying to do all of that, and people just trying to keep their kids safe. And he's like, this is an arrow.
Oh, right.
It goes out to do damage.
Yeah.
You don't keep your arrow safe. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I think I wasn't there yet. My worldview hadn't materialized to where his was. I was new family, just trying to get a job and hustle and do the basic things. Yeah. He was way ahead of me there. And so I said, I'm going.
Was this in 15? Do you know?
No, it's 14.
Okay.
14, maybe right around that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
I gotta go back and look at those dates now. And so get out to Moscow. He said, I'm gonna send you up early. So
That's right.
we got 3 months. I gotta know what he told you. I gotta know the story he told you. So we finished saving Christmas in February. March 4th or something like that, 5th, I think I drove up. After that, sent my family up here. Sent my family along the way with my mother-in-law to take the little road trip.
Yeah.
Then I came up and met with them in Portland, and we made our way here. The night we get here, Nate Wilson and Heather Wilson greet us. And when we got to Moscow, knowing how to move around and get around the city is usually a complication. It wasn't here. It wasn't
well,
here.
there's Main Street.
Well, that.
And
but
those 2 other streets.
People were friendly.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a place for us to stay before we had even, it's not a hotel. It's like, hey, here goes a place for a couple weeks. You guys get on your feet. Here's the city. Here's where you want to be at. And it's amazing. Moscow is small, but it's bigger than, there's places you don't want to be because if you got a family, you want to be close to the college.
Right.
You want to be busy streets, kids to play.
Yep. And
so one of the realtors here just took us around town, even though we weren't going to buy a house at the time, and just showed us a great place and hooked us up with, hey, these people are going to be written soon. Talk to them. I mean, it was amazing the culture that we ran into when we got here. And so we...
this is a deep patriarchy, dude.
The deep. But it was good. And so got up here and...
We were covering our racist tracks, I think.
That's what it was. Yeah, I did a great job because I still ain't seen them yet. Well, I got up here feeling I was racist too. So
okay, so then now you're in Moscow. I think everybody knows. I mean, I feel like if they didn't, now we have a better idea that you being a part of CrossPolitic is not much of a leap. I mean, as far as we're keeping track of what you're doing, producing shows,
right,
and the rest. So, how did you let Gabe Wrench rope you into this?
Well, wrenches rope everybody in this stuff. I mean, how Christopher Hitchens got roped into,
Man, that little video that Darren released eventually, is the greatest of Christopher Hitchens talking about Aaron. He just won't stop.
What's nice about that is I saw that years before he ever released it.
That's awesome.
But when I said, man, I'm so happy that he did Collision, kind of the backstory of it. I want him to do a second version. That's just me. The world needs more Darren Doan films.
Yeah.
Period. I should stop now, huh?
Yeah, that's it. That's actually the last one. So.
Yeah. Okay. But that wrenches have the ability to make people do stuff that they probably don't want to do.
Right.
Because I knew that, I fought against it. So
Yeah.
the first time Gabe asked me, it was an equivocation it was no equivocation, no. Like, I didn't equivocate one bit.
Yeah.
No. Gabe was like, well, that was weird. Okay. Gabe is like a bulldog, man. He's like, when he wants
They both have foreheads that are capable of like going through anything,
Yeah.
And they just do it with like that grin and,
Pastors are my weak spot.
Okay. Got it.
So he
Okay,
got Pastor Toby.
Got it.
Then Pastor Toby said, hey, me and Gabe want to talk about some tech stuff. Brought me into his office.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't do it in the sanctuary, in the lobby.
Right. It's in the
No,
office.
to the
He
office.
shut the door, I bet.
Shut the door.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And I think I might have said this before, but I knew what I was walking into. And so my goal was to see if I could produce, and then just our dialogue, banter, back and forth, just a very fun, engaging way to talk about topics, kind of like ESPN,
Sure.
Fox Sports kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if we had any chemistry. So I went in there knowing what they were about to ask, but I was also went in testing to see if that was a possibility.
Okay.
And we talked for an hour.
Okay.
And it was a kind of conversation that was like, this is edifying. This is engaging. This could be a show.
Okay.
And I had to go talk to my wife because that stuff takes a lot of time and energy. And she's like, if you want to do it. So I don't want to do it. But they beat me up, man.
Yeah.
Pastor Toby had his collar on at the time.
Oh,
it was like,
yeah. Those boots.
Yeah, those boots.
Those boots under that robe was it.
He'd raise his hands and say, the Lord has told me unto you,
Yeah.
you should do a podcast with the two of us. And I was like,
you're just
how I say no to God,
yeah,
you know?
Right.
But I didn't want to, I know the work of it. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to do it. It's a lot of hard work.
Because you're also doing film stuff, I imagine.
Yeah.
You know, you had things you were doing. So.
Yeah, I had other things I was working on, and that just takes a lot of time. And so when we brought cameras in, we grew a lot because at that point, I had already connections with NRB Television, a few other places,
Okay.
TLN. It's like, okay, once we get ready to do video, let's get us into places.
Yeah.
And so those two kind of happened simultaneously.
Got it.
But
And now you guys are across the street.
now we're imagine that.
Yeah.
We actually got two little offices across the street.
Yeah.
And God's been kind to us, man. So
That's awesome. So I feel like people, because I wanted to do this because of the Founders doc. Because you got roped. Somehow the Baptists roped you in.
it's just here's one thing about social media. It only takes two people.
Right.
That's all it is. I think three.
And so, because I plan on putting Chocolate Knox and then the Founders doc, and I feel like anybody who's still around is going to be upset. So you got roped into the Founders doc. I feel like you found yourself in like the two most controversial on the Presbyterian side, and now you're hanging out with controversial Baptists. So
right.
What's going on with that? Are
Well,
you just looking for it or what?
Here's something that's interesting. You know how you're talking about these are real Baptists. You talked about that earlier. With
Yeah.
I found a group of guys through the Statement on Social Justice
Okay.
that was written. It kind of came out, it was kind of a big thing. Tom Askell was at the forefront of that. Founders Ministry.
I don't think I ever made that connection.
Oh yeah.
So he was at the forefront of that.
He would never probably say that, but yeah,
Okay.
he was
Okay.
definitely at the forefront of it. Yes.
Okay.
And he was part of a group of guys I think that met in Dallas. He was they were already kind of planning something like this, but a group of guys that met in Dallas who were seeing these things happening. They all came together and agreed on this statement. But he was definitely leading the charge with that. And I found out that he was a fighter. And he's an old school fighter. Tom Askell was part of the conservative resurgence in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
And so he was been engaged, 30 years ago. You know what I mean?
Got it.
And understanding how to engage. And so he just went back to his church and just started preaching and doing pastor stuff. And something that creeped in. He looked up and said, "What is this?" And said, "Well, I'm going to write a statement." I think when he wrote the statement, I don't think he knew the fallout
Yeah.
that was going to happen, especially from people who he's been friends with for 20, 30 years.
Okay.
So I found out about them through the statement. Actually, I known about Tom Askell way before that. And, excuse me. And he's just been a godly man. Marcus was the one who put me on to Thomas Askell.
Okay.
I should say doctor. I never call him doc, but he's a doctor. And I worked with his daughter, and children represent their parents well or not. She was
Sure.
a great representation of her upbringing, her father and family. And so I didn't know. Marcus was like, "Oh my goodness, that's Tom Askell's daughter. Tom Askell's been the man, resurges." Okay, whatever. I come from a charismatic background, just a
Yeah,
reformed theology.
yeah.
I don't need nobody else except for Calvin and Luther and Zwingli. Okay, so
right.
and so I'd heard of him, and then I sent him a message. I saw with the social justice statement on social justice that some of the people who were signing the statement, who agreed with the statement, I was concerned that it would be hijacked, that the conversation would be lost about some of the real things that are going on. And I said, man, I texted him Twitter and I said, "Hey man, like that's my concern. I just want to know, where are you at? Where's your heart at on this?" And Tom was just basically straight up with me and said, "I have some of those concerns too. But I think that those are worth it to try and get a conversation started." And so that's what we're trying to do. This is just to start a conversation with our brothers who we disagree with. And I appreciate his honesty.
Sure.
Most people ain't honest with you, you know?
Yeah.
And he didn't seem, I don't like commercial people who are polished, politician, commercial folks. I can't trust them. Somebody who can be straight up, be honest with me, and don't feel like that they're going to use me for a platform for themselves in one way or another, I can fight with.
Right.
And he was very kind, and they offered us to come down and do a live show at their conference in Florida in January.
Okay.
And we went down there, and that was the first time meeting them, and I just really loved what they were trying to do. I appreciated it, and I stayed at Tom Askell's home.
Okay.
And I tell us, there's a story about that. Again, in his house, and he has all these infant baptism books, how they're unbiblical, and he just sitting right next to my bed, just a stack
That's
of
so
them, and
funny.
he just punked me, dude. He straight got me, and it was like 1:30 in the morning. I'm laughing my behind off, and he just got me. And there's a story on Twitter about that. I can't do it nearly as much justice right now, but he was just a godly man.
Yeah.
He was just a godly man. He feared the Lord, and he was honest. I watched Tom do the keto movie we're talking about, where anybody who he was fighting or he was engaging with, he was protecting them almost as much as he was fighting them. And those are his brothers, you know? And so while he's disagreeing with them, he's holding them to what they actually represent and not thinking them as nefarious. And I'm one to throw in them.
Yeah.
Right? Now they're nefarious. They trying to uproot the church. He's like, hold on, brother. You know? He's just that guy, you know, and they have to prove it to him. And so I was watching this old film that he had told me about. So I got a history lesson about Baptists that I had never heard before. These guys, covenantal Baptists, 1689 guys, I mean, they're diehards. And I only thought Baptists came from the Anabaptist movement. I didn't connect Baptists, Reformed Baptists, to the Puritan movement.
Got it.
And so they were very clear about their roots puritanically. And so, I mean, they just loaded me up with a great Baptist history and the unity that Presbyterians and Baptists had, even though we were drowning them. So, hey, they wanted water. They wanted water. We gave them water. Right. Okay. And so after that, I just my heart was endeared to them. And they told me about this they told me about the Southern Baptist Convention and how they almost lost it during the time that all major denominations were going liberal.
Right.
And so everybody lost except the Southern Baptist Convention. I was like, what? And they told me the story of the conservative resurgence that basically took 10 to 13 years to implement, where if you can get the president to appoint committees on committees, and then that person would appoint committee heads, and it bled down to 6 major seminaries that Southern Baptist Convention has, and Southern Baptists have. That's all they have is 6. Yep. So the institution, in one sense, is small but powerful.
Sure.
And they
I feel like one of those institutions is like the largest seminary of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Southern.
Yeah.
And so, but it all started for them to be able to get the right president, and put Al Mohler in position.
Got it.
And that created a domino effect that basically turned the Southern Baptist Convention to being the largest denomination in America. Basically, it put President Trump in office.
Yeah.
So the most conservative denomination in America, right, politically, and the largest denomination in America outside of Catholics, right?
Right.
And so I started seeing that, well, if you want to change America, you got to take out the Southern Baptists.
SEC country.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And watching the attacks that they were dealing with were like, is working with all of their guilt.
Okay.
Like they had, who doesn't have some sort of historical racist past in some way or another?
Right.
We all do. Everybody.
And if they don't, they're just like so terrified to look.
Right. Well, they're not human at that point,
Yeah.
But so that play was happening, and then, what was it? Watching their government, their church government is not one that I theologically agree with, but it's one that I can see that works for them, and has stood the test of time. Where even the theological position and persuasion I agree with, had to split off with their denomination, because they couldn't, right?
Yeah.
And so Southern Baptists were somehow able to have this unity and still change the power, and so that was intriguing to me. Well, there was this film called Battle for the Minds.
Okay.
And it's an old film shot early 90s, maybe right as Al Mohler's getting placed into the position of power at Southern. And he basically, it's the guy, he was wondering why his mom couldn't be a pastor, and they did this whole documentary. It's about an hour long. And I watched that documentary, and I said, this is exactly what's happening right now.
Okay.
I mean, Molly Marshall, who I think was a head at I don't know if she's a teacher at Southern, a professor at Southern or something like that. But just the arguments they're using, feminism, sexual abuse, all that stuff was rooted into complementarianism. And I'm sending this to Tom and to Jared, the president and vice president of Founders Ministry. It's like, oh my goodness, guys, this is what you were telling me about. So I'm just getting inculcated with the culture and what's going on, and so you guys have been here before already.
Yeah.
And then
little did we in Moscow know, we would have been worried about you.
Is Knox okay? Yeah. Did he dry his kids off, or are they still, just wondering?
Exactly.
They still taking communion? Okay, he's still taking communion. All right.
Oh, now you've done it.
Yeah.
Now you've done it.
I brought up FB, didn't I? Oh, doggone, I did it. It's so cool now, right?
I know. This morning we just put on. I was in this booth with Doug.
Sitting in this
convo with in that chair, doing a convo with James White.
No way.
Hopefully releasing it tomorrow. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, this won't be out after. Well, yeah, so everybody will know about it.
That's awesome.
So it is cool.
Hey, hook me with the pre-copy of that. So I was down there in Florida before this. The film. I sent those guys the film. Said, hey, this is exactly what you're going to buy. I said, hey guys, you need to start telling stories. You guys got to start putting. Basically, what I was saying, you need some sacramental theology. You need to start putting the stories of the narrative in this, because the world beats us right now because they tell better stories than we do. And we need to start, we have the best story. We need to start communicating that story and finding ways to tell that story. And I think I resonated with them enough to the point that they said, let's do a film then.
Okay.
And that's how we got to.
Got it. So this is what the whole time I'm thinking, like, you were there at the convention.
Right. I was.
Filming.
Yeah.
So you didn't know how that would end.
So
I mean, I'm sure you might have had a pretty good idea that. I mean, it's clear in your interviews going up, everybody's like, it's gonna, something's happening.
Yeah.
We're about to bring this to the floor, and we're gonna argue.
It wasn't
all
even
that's happening.
I wish I could say it was that obvious.
It wasn't obvious.
Not like that.
Okay.
I
can't remember who it was. I mean, so
it was Rod Martin.
Yes.
Rod Martin said, "I can't believe that we're having Resolution 9 make it out of committee and going to have something we're going to talk about on the floor. This wouldn't have had even before the conservative resurgence." And so but at that point, as a filmmaker, I'm hearing that I'm like, no, we're making a film on women pastors, complementarianism, and social justice. We're not making a film. What is critical race theory, intersectionality?
Yep.
What is that? Okay, Resolution 9, cool, whatever. Sure. We're interviewing. Mark Dever and who else was it? Mark Coppinger and David Miller, and we're even Owen Strachan. We interviewed him talking about women pastors. At the time, Beth Moore was just a big topic, and Owen had written out something about women ministers and pastors, and so it was that was our goal. We were going to make that the film, the majority of it, and then social justice on the other side, and these two things creeping in. Yeah. Tom had an awareness of all of these things about critical theory and all that stuff like that already. But as a filmmaker, that wasn't what I was going in to make. That was just a kind of a narrow...
like a B story.
Exactly, you know?
Yep.
It was more social justice stuff. What do we do? How do we deal with it? When I saw Resolution 9 go down at the convention, the way that they tried to cover up what had happened, or the way they tried to push it through, let me know that this was way more important, way more impactful, and had implications further. Just from their tells.
So that's what's nuts. As they say, hey, we have 41 seconds left. We're just going to pass all these together. I mean, that's wild. I'm with, it's a huge convention center, like I think football, basketball stadium, whatever. I'm on one corner of it. Tom Askel's on the other corner. I got a long lens on him. I have his audio because I'm mic'd up, so when he goes to the floor to talk, so I'm texting back and forth with him. So in the film, it goes Resolution 1, Resolution 2, and then I'm getting anxious because I have a film crew. We're ready to film him present his amendment to Resolution 9, which, by the way, was just like a blip in our schedule. We'll film this. Sure. And I'm getting a little annoyed. I'm like, man, I see 45 minutes on the clock, but the way that they're letting these people talk, it's felt like the Titanic.
okay, I know this thing's gonna say.
Right.
Bring on the water. Let's drown these jokers. Get to the movie. I'm trying to figure out.
They're still playing instruments in there.
They're dancing in the exactly.
Yeah,
Come on, shut this joker down. Okay, we praying for him. Let's go.
Right.
I'm like, why can't let these people talk forever?
Yeah.
It's like testimony service.
I feel like the film side of it just adds, right? I mean, like just the fact because you're like, I actually have real concerns.
Right.
It's like I'm holding stuff and mics are going and our battery's gonna run out.
Battery's running out, all that stuff, and so so I'm texting back and forth with him, and his daughter is next to me working camera and helping us with logistics, and I said, how long is this gonna take? Like, are they gonna speed this up? Or she's like, I'm concerned they're gonna put a block. They're gonna block it. I'm like, a block? This sounds crazy. What's a block? Yeah, like that's when as a filmmaker,
right.
when you say they're gonna block, like. Is it like a basketball block?
Yeah.
We need block.
Yeah.
She's like, well, what they do is they put them all together and they make us vote on the last ones that we didn't get to. I was like, no, they can't do. I'm like, this is like, okay, if there's ever a part of the Christian TMZ thing inside of me that came out, it's like, they can't do that.
Yeah, checking batteries, making sure the batteries are all good to go.
Hey, everybody, make sure we're rolling. Don't miss anything.
It's the block.
It's a block.
The block is coming.
The block is coming. And so I texted the Tom Ascot, and I was just looking at his messages this last week, and he was like, no, they won't do that. It's either now or never. They'll do it. And we're getting closer. We're at 5 minutes. I was like, are you sure? Because we're getting to this last resolution 8, and there's like 3 minutes left. And he's like, no, they'll just put more time on there. And so when you can probably hear me scream, right when Curtis Wood says we have 41, I've heard from our parliamentarian that we have 41 minutes left.
41 seconds.
41 seconds left.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
What's funny is I think it's Askell. It's like, no.
That
made me laugh.
Well, and everybody's saying no. If you can hear all the dialogue, I just have Tom on the mic, so he's the loudest. But I'm over on the side going berserk. I think I stepped on his daughter's foot because I'm standing up. You don't know this part of the story. I have a voting ballot at the Southern Baptist Convention. They messed up and gave me a messenger bag, so I had the ability to vote or not. So I may or may not have voted. Yeah, I just want to say that there's security there for Presbyterians getting in to vote is not really that secure, so that should tell you something right away.
Well, I think, too, just given the resolutions, they were probably afraid to even ask. Yeah. Or, they're just like, I'm not about to get in trouble.
Hey, brother, I mean, it's okay. It's fine. Yeah, let him through. Let him through. His people have been through enough. It's just one. I should have made a motion. I motioned that the Southern Baptist Convention embrace infant baptism. Who is this guy?
They would have all just been like, this is something we should consider.
Give him that one. We've had our founding is racist. Let's just give him one. It was like so. But when that happened, I couldn't hold. I was dumbfounded, man. I just couldn't believe that happened.
Yeah.
I saw politics happening in front of me, and I'm saying, no, these are Christians. Like we're gonna something so serious. And when I started reading through Resolution 9 and what it was, something so serious surely wasn't going to just get bundled with. Women shouldn't go to the military and, abortion is bad. If you look at the other resolutions they were trying to bundle with, it was like all things that you have to vote yes on.
Yeah.
It was very strategic.
Right.
And they all know. So this part of the story comes in later. If you watch the film, you figure out later that this resolution was gutted. Right. The resolution came in opposition to. So the Resolution 9 originated from a pastor who was in opposition to critical race theory and intersectionality. Your face right now is amazing.
We don't have cameras.
Yeah, we don't have cameras, but boy, if you could see your face. But they took it and gutted it, put his name on it still, and presented it as a resolution basically in favor of using it as an analytical tool.
Was he there?
He was. I don't know if he was there or not.
That's the interview.
But that's the interview. So we find that out later. We find that out later that had happened. So Tom Ascol, basically we were able to get the vote to allow us more time to work through these issues. And praise God for that. They need to happen. But there were 2 amendments to Resolution 9 offered. One person wanted to reject not 2 amendments. One person wanted to reject the resolution all out. The committee didn't see fit to do that. I don't know the proper terms for that.
Sure.
So Tom Ascol took the approach of, okay, he knows the Southern Baptist Convention world very well.
Yeah.
He's been there for a long time. He gets it. the only thing that stops you from getting your amendment is passed is how much you can hopefully win over the committee
Okay.
and the committee chair
Okay.
to see that you're not, playing the game. You're maybe
Sure.
you're with them. And
Is this like Robert's Rules or whatever it's
I
called?
think
Is
it
it
might
like
be.
okay?
I saw some of that there.
Okay, cool.
So while we have one who's Tom Buck, who was completely opposed to it, which I think he's right to just remove this
Sure.
whole thing, Tom Masker was like, bet, I'm probably not going to get you to do that. But if I can get you to point to the origins of how this worldview is oftenly used and what ideologies that it comes from, I can at least vote for this resolution because we're talking about the origins of this thing.
Right.
And it's secular origins and what it's trying to do. If we can put that in there, okay, guys.
Right.
Well, he got voted against in that.
Okay.
They considered it an unfriendly resolution, unfriendly amendment. I'm sorry.
Right.
And so it's just shocking, though.
Those happen. The unfriendly resolution.
And he couldn't have exactly. and he couldn't have made it more friendly.
Yeah.
The part of the story I didn't put in the film was that just moments before that, Tom Askell was having a conversation with Curtis Woods in the back in the tunnel, in the hallways. They had bumped into each other because we were interviewing Danny Aiken and Greenway. And he had bumped into Curtis Woods in the back and had a very cordial conversation, very friendly conversation, to the point where it's like, I think they had some disagreements with Jarvis Williams, Tom had, and they had worked it out in one sense because I think they thought that Tom Askell was slandering Jarvis. They come to realize that it wasn't slander, and they, everybody made up. And he's like, hey, if you ever come out, we'll show you around and get you guys together, and that we love to make. It was very cordial. It was,
Sure.
and that whole thing just happened in the back. So when you go up now to have this resolution with you already have a warm lead. Tom is already in favor of your resolution. He just wants to amend so that we can point to the origins. The fact that you don't consider, when you watch that and you listen to what Tom is saying, the fact that you don't consider that a friendly amendment to a resolution that he's willing to vote for.
Yeah.
I just,
Right.
Why not? Make an amendment to it. I watched them make amendments and accept amendments that weren't necessary at all.
Right.
For all the other for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I saw them reject ones that were foolish.
Sure.
And, I saw them doing that properly. And all of a sudden, this one makes sense. It's an elder statesman. We know him to be a man of God, trustworthy in all things. He's not trying to sidestep you. He's going to say, I'm going to vote for your amendment. And this was just like, what were you trying to protect?
Right. Well.
Yeah. Well, that's still to be answered. That's maybe another movie.
Yeah.
And so the film took a turn for me there.
Okay.
Because I had to figure out what was going on.
Right.
And then, but it really took a turn when I lost half of our crew after the Den Hollander.
Okay.
So we dropped the trailer. I take the trailer, and when we were there at the conference, there was. You just tell me when you got it.
No, man. I'm here.
When
Well,
get in here-
now I feel like everybody just turned up their thing.
Yeah.
So, I'm just getting.
All right, hey, brother,
I'm getting
thank you for
comfy,
this.
man.
It's pretty appreciate it. It's time to go.
I think we just guaranteed that.
Everybody's stuck
yeah,
around.
everybody just
Can we
stuck
end it here
around.
now?
Hey, we'll be back next year.
Next
for,
year for
part
round
2.
3. So at the conference, Southern Baptist Convention, they opened up the whole Southern Baptist Convention the previous night with a panel on sexual abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
Rachel Den Hollander was on that panel.
I saw that in the doc.
Right.
You see that? Okay.
And also you, what's his name? ERLC guy, Russell Moore.
Russell Moore.
And so Russell Moore's, you see that what he says in the film. If you haven't seen that part, just go watch it. It's amazing.
Real quick, can you give the link? Like, it's Founders. It's just Founders.
founders.org/CineDoc.
Okay.
And that night, watching that panel talk, there was a lot of undertone conversation about pastors not really being capable to handle some of the duties of a pastor.
Okay.
And it bothered me because I don't know anything that's more important than guarding a human being's soul.
Yep.
And I don't care what the issues are, knowing how to deal with them. It's your Bible that tells you to get the authorities involved first. It's your Bible that tells you what jurisdictions you have and what jurisdictions they have. It's your Bible. And if your Bible is not going to be the standard of how you're going to handle something like a sexual abuse situation, then you might as well toss it up. And who cares? Who cares at that point what we do? That's not going to be our standard for how we're going to deal with all these situations. Then throw it all away. Everything's up for grabs. And I saw a lot of challenges with that. And even I think there's an article that I think Jared wrote, or if he has it, he talks about it on one of their podcasts from Founders about her holding to a higher standard of Scripture in some of these issues, or basically going beyond what Scripture, that's called legalism, people. That's unbiblical, people. But so that was watching that night. I knew there was something fishy there, and I didn't know what it was. But I knew
wasn't that in reference to Chandler's stuff?
So Matt Chandler, his article just came out conveniently that same day, I think it was, about Matt Chandler's church having having a sexual abuse issue or scandal with one of their old employees at the church at a camp. And she goes through and says, we try and protect our institutions, and sometimes we try to do it unintentionally. And she goes out and basically takes Chandler to the woodshed. Just lays out, he did this, he shouldn't have done that, he didn't mention the person's name, he didn't, get the authorities involved, he didn't tell his people so they can help the case, basically obstruction of justice, whatever. Chandler hears about this, flies in from sabbatical. He wasn't at the convention. He comes in off sabbatical because he hears about this to go to Baptist 21, which is one of the news sources, to respond basically to all. That's the only reason they did that video. Chandler comes in, has a video the next day responding to those cases. What's amazing to me is that we just got done hearing from Rachel Denhollander the previous night. I would have loved for him to say, listen, this is slanderous. Like, no one called and asked us. No one, but he basically got up and repudiated everything that she had said about them. They went to the detective. They let the families who were at the camp talk to the detective. The detective was the one that told him not to release the name because they don't want to obstruct the justice, right? They wanted to make sure they were targeting the guy. They had honed on the guy and don't release his name yet because we want to make sure we get him. And then they were the first ones, Chandler and his people were the first ones to say, oh my goodness, Lord, help us. It's one of ours. God, forgive us, pray for us. They put it on their social media accounts. They put it on their website. And I'm looking at this narrative, and I don't know if there's a retraction of anything she said about Chandler. Yeah. And I just was like, what's going on here? This is odd that we have a pastor who is in it, who's using a ministry that's like, I think it's called Grace or something like Ministry Safe, or one of the two. He's using
Grace. I don't know.
He's using a ministry to help him figure out how to wade through this, because he says in the interview, I wasn't trained in this. I don't know how to handle any of this, which I think is to his detriment. Like, you're a pastor. You have a Bible. Figure it out. Okay? What do you mean you're not trained? Get your Bible out, bro.
Yep.
Or sit down.
Yeah.
We're talking about human souls here.
And if anything, it definitely at least shows us, like, if there are two ditches to the issue, we know which one he's way closer to.
Right.
Which is going to obviously be way closer to her sensibilities than an AR other. You know what I mean?
But he's following their rules.
Right.
When I saw that, and I did some other research and things like that, I realized that there are people and institutions that are being manipulated and used to bring about a certain outcome that is not biblical. And so Owen Strachan had a part in his interview that we had with him. He said there are principalities and powers. There's always been principalities and powers basically trying to work themselves out inside of our. And so at that point, I had not had clarity to all the influences that were going on. I knew she was part of it. I knew that she was engaged with them one way or another. And again, her intentions might have been good, but they're not helping, and she's manipulating pastors to do something that's unbiblical. Right. And so I did that throughout the film, not just with her, with Russell Moore. Yep. I did that with James Merritt. And with her, she had less to say in it because I hadn't figured all of the connections out yet, and it was just a point to this is coming. Yeah. So she was in an image basically blurred. It was an out of focus shot that had some artistic design to it to show that there's something going on here. I knew you would know who that was. Okay. Wasn't surprised by that. That was intentional. Yeah. That was the whole point, to say exactly what Owen Strachan was saying over the top of this and with others involved in it. Well, that caught fire and blew the trailer up. So anyway, after all that, because of the lack of people's ability
I
to
think that's
understand.
an understatement, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, is
But
it?
I think so.
Okay. I live in Moscow. I don't
Yeah.
really get all the news.
Yeah, I think
I'm sure
that's
founders did. But are you calling her a demon? Well, I don't think she comes from hell. I don't think she fell from heaven. You know, no, that's not what we're saying.
I mean,
Principalities,
these are threads that are happening. I just saw one
Right.
this week, so I mean, this is still a thing.
principalities and powers. There's a such okay. They're not demons. Okay, we're talking about worldviews that are perpetuating and working them. Worldviews need people to push them.
Yeah.
Right. And she's pushing a particular worldview that's antithetical to the gospel in a lot of ways. Even though she has been a great champion in one sense of showing us how the gospel operates with Nesser.
Yeah.
That was beautiful, man. I love that.
Right.
And so it's heartbreaking to see that there's a worldview that doesn't follow in line with even her own commitments there. So that's disappointing. But that made so many people drop out of filming. A lot of the head guys, they just couldn't handle that being a possibility to be associated with what they consider her a demon. So founders to try and help remove people's, trying to help people see things clearly, removed her from the trailer.
Got it.
And in so doing, no one else decided to stay with us still after that. So they wanted to try and point to that still is true, regardless if it's her or not, right? They were trying to do that. But in the process, they lost 3 members of their board. There's stories behind that I can't talk about. But let's just say that people have hooks in them. And when those people get ready to exercise those hooks, it works.
Right.
And in that so I lost my film. I lost the original idea of my film. It was the people who were part of it, the narrative was there. God took it from me.
Got it.
And said, this is going to be your story now.
Yep.
And
Because you had interviews, right, that were no
Danny
longer.
Aiken, Owen Strand, Greenway. I don't think Greenway actually dropped, but Dever was gone.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, there was a lot of guys who just, backed out at that point. And so God gave me a different film to make that had that same idea. There's thought things creeping in, ideologies and worldviews antithetical to the gospel, but the source of it wasn't what I thought it was. The source of it was critical race theory, intersectionality, and that's producing all of it. How we understand oppressed groups, how we understand sin, how we understand who's doing all that stuff is feminism.
And maybe for the better. I mean, I thought one of my favorite parts. I thought Glenn Sunshine took the show. I mean, I thought he was awesome. So who's also a member on Fight Laugh Feast Network.
Yeah, so he's co-host of the show,
the podcast,
the Theology podcast. Yeah, he was absolutely phenomenal. I think so too. I needed that extra little bit. James Lindsay is an absolute beast as well. I didn't use as much of him.
Yeah.
That was a rhetorical thing. It's he does take Russell Moore to task.
Yeah.
I mean, he does a great job, but Lindsay I think gets this better than probably most Christians do. So yeah. So God gave me a new film, and this is what you have
now. That's what everybody saw.
And that's what everybody saw.
Okay. So you went to Florida. You did a whole release. I saw people. I flew down. Everybody was there.
Yeah.
It went well.
It did. I was surprised that people wanted to sit down for 2 hours and watch a movie.
Did you watch it?
I did. It hurt. I was kind of in or out. I've been to premieres before with, and it's just like you're not comfortable.
Sure.
Your work is on display, and it's had so much around it, and this was a slanderous piece. And
what day was that, by the way?
It was
last weekend.
It was the 6th.
Okay.
They dropped it Friday, the 6th.
Okay. So a week ago from today.
Right.
Got it.
And they released it, full release, went out on Thursday.
Okay.
The 12th.
How's it been?
The feedback has been great.
Okay.
It's been phenomenal. I think that we found a way. The whole film really is for pastors. It's not necessarily a film that's with the target of laymen. There's some heavy lifting in there. It's pretty dense in some places. But the goal is to try and get pastors have their heads down, tending to their flock, working. It's just like Tom Askell was doing. And you look up and you realize that your denomination or your organization that you're a part of is moving in a direction that you're not.
Right.
And you don't know why or what's going on. And Tom has just been a federal head for those kind of people. I think Tom has been the federal head in a lot of ways for most Southern Baptists. He's the guy who's seen it. He's the guy who's in place, and he's the guy speaking out, and he's trying to get them to see what's going on. And it's really been some of the things that I fought in this film. People were not happy with, and some of them were. As a filmmaker, I deal with this all the time, though. We're not happy with, like, Tom is not this person. You're presenting Tom in this way. Or Tom was a much more laid back, astute library guy. He's a pastor, you know. But I'm going to tell you something. After Resolution 9, what you see in the opening of the film wasn't some sort of, oh, let me get you sit like this. Let me get you to, this was just what happened. I just
I think
documented.
that's probably one of the best parts of the film, too. I mean,
Yeah.
which we were talking about, which really funny the way you talked about it, just even as you watched your own film change in real time. It seemed like a lot of those interviews happened like coming off of the floor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, some of those did. That one especially was just that night. He was tired.
There's parts that I thought, like, you see that they seem exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, he's, you know, but it's so funny. Right after Resolution 9, the funniest things I didn't even put in the film were so many people were heartbroken, people who knew what was going on, who can't believe they lost, and like, what do we do now? And I just have audio of Tom like, resolutions have no authority. I'm a pastor. I'm going to go back and preach and teach. We're going to fight against this. What you mean, what we going to do? You know, it was just full on charge.
Right.
All right. But I think that he realized that he was probably a little late.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
That's
I
good.
think he realized, like, this, we shouldn't even gotten this far.
Right.
Like Rob Martin said, the fact that it's coming out of committee, we should have never gotten this far. So Tom realized where he was in the story and it's like, okay, well, now I know what I'm doing next. And so the end of the film, I tried to let it be how people are used to seeing Tom Askell.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? It's in his library. He's talking. He's repenting. He's saying, I haven't been doing my job and paying attention. We're supposed to guard the flock. I'm doing that. But then there's other areas over here that I haven't been giving my time to. And in the same amount of way, or, you know, he's like, and so he owns it, man. He owns it. And I wanted people to see, like, at least that's the Tom that they're used to seeing, you know? And so I was able to see all the facets of who he is and engage that. So I tried to film in those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you caught us a unique time that's probably really healthy for people. As I think about, like, where I grew up, and there was not a lot of there's not a lot of conflict, period.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of godly conflict, for sure. So even just, I think it's crucial just to see godly Christians in conflict.
Yep.
And fighting it in a way that we've already mentioned on the podcast of just, you know, not losing your soul to it.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up, what are we talked briefly just on updates as far as Pastor Askell.
Yeah.
How can listeners be praying for him and his family, and any updates you're willing to share on? It is, like we said, a week after the release.
Right. So, watching at his church. If you don't know, I was at his church when he fell. He hasn't had a lot of support. When we did the release and we did a panel, I was loaded for bear. I was ready to unload and just like, here's everybody who left and the whole night. But Tom, God graciously let him speak first. And one of the things he said, it caught me. He's like, this has been hard. This has been hard. I never thought I was going to lose my friends of 30 years. And going through some of the friends and the founders board, and he's like, this has been tough. So I haven't prayed and fasted this much, and I can't remember how long. And I realized at that point that everybody had a chance to talk about founders but Tom. Because that was something I hadn't heard before. And so it changed my whole tone. I was like, okay.
You brought it back down.
Yeah, I brought it down a lot. It's like, I need to let him talk. I need to let both of them talk. Jared, too. Those guys have lost. I was thinking about the last time I lost a friend. It didn't have 30 years behind it. That's a lot of ministry. It's a lot of, and so they've lost a lot. They've given up a lot. They've been by themselves fighting for a very, very long time. And the stress of that, the stress of losing friends like that and guys you respect and have been in battle with before, it takes a toll. And I'm praying that this documentary vindicates the stance that he's had and the heart that he's had and the graciousness in which he's had it, that while he is not as healthy as he can be right now, that brothers would stand up, that his friends would see you're right, and that brothers would get behind him. And so because of that would allow him to really heal in ways that he needs. So he needs to heal his body. He needs to heal his mind. He's got all kinds. I mean, so be praying for his health, that God would give him a speedy recovery. He sees this so clearly. He knows the politics better than anybody. He understands the battle. He knows what needs to be done, and he's given up everything for it. So pray for the God to send some men to hold up his arms like with Moses. That is needed in all those ways. He's had his church, has been faithful and good friend. Jared has been an awesome support. She's got such a strong family. Wow. I'm telling you, watching what happened with him at his church and watching his kids engage, that's why you have kids. That's why you have lots of kids. You know, it's just a slew. He had a whole army by himself that came into his rescue.
Ready to stand at the gate.
Yeah, exactly. You won't be ashamed, right?
Right.
And so so they've been hugely helpful to him in just so many different ways. But I'm hoping that this stirs God's people up to first repent and then to say, okay, what do you need?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, it's founders.com/synodoc.
Founders.org/synodoc. If you go to founders.org, their .org should bring you right to the synodoc too. You can find it on the page, but founders.org/synodoc.
Perfect, man. Well, congrats.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm extremely honored. And I've
Hey,
enjoyed.
what do you mean, dude?
I'm honored to no, seriously. And that you would even consider having me on your show, and then
Easy, man. And I've been asking for weeks. So
I came
in early before the tweets, man.
That's true. You have, and I just didn't believe you. And it's like I've enjoyed the conversation
Listen,
with you.
man. Grateful for you. Thank you for taking the time. And
enjoyed it.
see you later, man.
Thank you.